Hey, Slapdog! The Brainiacs are ready.
Here we go. Welcome into Leather Brains, your host, Slapdog, and it is episode 180. Gosh dang it, boys.
180?
We are getting close to the 200. Like I said, boys, because I'm here with two of my very good pals today, Alan Casanova Castro and the Big Yeti himself. Gentlemen, pleasure to talk some football here with you today. Producer Scotty is on a family vacation. We did not approve of that, but he snuck his way out, so we hope he is having a good vacation. But nonetheless, he is not here. So
I don't think he had PTO to cover that. So
he didn't. No. So he definitely is taking an unpaid time off. But
we should have him record like a few episodes just by himself. We see how long he can rant.
Yeah. He's basically pulling in Aaron Rodgers right now. He just has an unexcused absence.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Let's start out by talking about Aaron Rodgers, boys. Before we get into the rest of the things, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers because I don't know if you guys saw some of the chatter over the week, but rumor has it the reason Aaron Rodgers was not at the Jets practice a few weeks ago was because he was on another ayahuasca trip. So, did you guys hear that? I'm not even kidding. Like, this is legitimate like murmur and chatter that's happening. Whether it's true or not, obviously I wasn't there.
The rumor I heard was that he was actually driving Justin Timberlake around and they switched up at the last second. That's just what I heard, what my sources told me. I don't know if that's true, but that's just what I heard.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it holds ground.
Dude, nothing surprises me anymore with Aaron Rodgers. That dude can do whatever the fuck he wants to do, and I'd believe it. Like, he's going to run for vice president? Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which is kind of funny because you think about like any of the other NFL, like literally any other NFL player, and you're like, what are you doing? But Aaron Rodgers, like that's legitimately something that has been floated around in media. He's going to run for vice president. And it's like, yeah, well, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Do you guys think Aaron Rodgers is going down the Antonio Brown path? Like, once he retires from the NFL, he's just going to be completely unhinged?
I don't know.
I don't know. If he takes his pads off in one of these games and just starts running off the field, like, we'll know he's come full circle. To me, Aaron Rodgers is like, when you have like that old grandpa at the park and he's just giving kids the middle finger and you're like, he's old, whatever. We're just going to let him do it. I think that's where Aaron Rodgers is now. They're just like, he won't be here much longer. Just let him have some fun.
Yeah, and like you look at like, okay, you bring up the Antonio Brown thing. Like, I feel like Antonio Brown is just trying as hard as he possibly can to stay relevant and stay in the media. And he'll do it by any means necessary for him to do that. Right. Aaron Rodgers is like anti like government and spying and like don't talk to me and like probably doesn't carry a cell phone. So I feel like it's just going to be a little bit more difficult for him to try and achieve the limelight that he still wants to have, with also trying to push as much of like security, like being secure as a human being and stuff. So it's a tough line to balance, and I think he's going to have to try and figure that out here. Probably in the not so distant future, because his tenure with the NFL is going to come to a close sooner rather than later.
Over under 10 games played this
year.
I'll take the over.
Fuck, I wanted to take the over too.
You can take it.
I'll go over.
Don't be afraid.
I'll go over. I know. I'll go over too. 10's a good line because there could be some where he. Is this all injury related, or like maybe he just rests? Like, what if towards the end of the season they locked in and they're going to rest him?
I just say overall, no matter what the.
I'll take the over.
I'll give him 10 games.
I'll take the over.
How stupid would we have been last season if we were to say over under 3 games, and we're like, it's over, and
if you could Nostradamus your way to a torn Achilles in the first series. You also would have been like,
I wonder how much money you would have won if you could bet on that. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to tear his Achilles on the 3rd play of the NFL.
Dude, you'd be set for life. On it. You would be set for life. There's no way you wouldn't.
Then you'd be arrested. Because you'd be like, how the hell did that happen?
What did you do?
What did you do?
Sorry, officer. I had the script.
You ever seen that movie? You remember the movie Saw? You remember that one? There's a part where like
that. It's gory.
Is it Saw? I don't. It's one of those gory ones, but they're like cut that dude's Achilles, and that's what's like.
Yeah, it probably is Saw.
Thinking you like pre-cut his Achilles before he went out there. Or
like
something. That's
little slight tear. So I put some drugs in his milk that morning.
That sounds terrible.
We've come a long way already in 5 minutes in this episode.
Yeah, we're doing great. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. So, per our boy Adam Shefty, Brandon Ayuk has requested to meet with the 49ers organization yesterday to discuss his contract, and it's also being reported per Ryan Clark that when Brandon Ayuk walked into the room to meet with the 49ers, he brought along his good pal Commanders rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels with him. We all know that Brandon Ayuk is pretty unhappy with his current offers that San Francisco has offered him, and Ayuk is comfortable playing for another team if the 49ers are unwilling, or if they're willing to trade him, rather. Dude, why in the hell would you bring Jaden Daniels to a negotiation for your contract? That is such a stupid thing. Like, I get it. I understand. You're like, okay, well, I have this guy here, this quarterback who wants me to come play for him. But, like, why are you bringing a rookie quarterback for another team in to come have contract negotiations for you to stay with the 49ers? I think that's one of the stupidest things. Like, if it's true, one of the dumbest things I've seen in quite a while.
If it's true, it's kind of like me bringing my best friend, like one of you guys, to work with me and like talk to my boss.
Trying to get
like,
you a
hey,
raise.
Yes.
Anthony thinks he should get a $20,000 raise. You know, can you make that happen for Anthony?
Not only,
Yeah.
but what would make matters worse is if Alan or I was working as competition for you getting this job. Like, we're at a rival company and you bring us in to help negotiate. Like, just so outlandishly weird. I could not believe it. Like I said, if it's true, absolutely absurd. And then I started looking into Ayuk's stats a little bit here to kind of see how he did this last season. He was outside the top 25 in targets for wide receiver. He was 20th in receptions. He was 7th in receiving yards and 9th in receiving yards per game. So he's kind of teetering the line of both good and bad there, just depending on how you want to cherry pick some of those stats. But we've seen wide receivers getting paid this offseason, and we can look at Jalen Waddle's contract as an example here. Jalen Waddle got a 3-year, roughly $28 million a year contract to stay with the Dolphins, and it's rumored that Brandon Ayuk is seeking $30+ million a year. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on this whole thing? We've kind of touched on this before, but go ahead, Alan.
We have. I think Ayuk just doesn't have any leverage for anything. We've talked about it in past episodes that the 49ers can recreate this production. Like, this isn't where he was such a piece of the offense that like they can't replicate it with anything. And, you know, I think even last time we talked with some of the rookies they brought in and people they can sign, like Ayuk isn't like a talent that you can't duplicate in some way. And so I don't know if he thought Jaden Daniels was going to give him leverage or if it was just like emotional support because he knows he has no leverage. Like, I have no idea. Like, the 49ers hold all the cards, and unfortunately for him, he's just going to be at the mercy at whatever team's willing to offer up because he's not going to get paid that. And I think for him, he's not also going to see the production to warrant that this next season. It's not like he's going to be able to like, okay, if I just play really hard, like I'm going to go ahead and prove you can run as much as you want. There's still so many mouths to feed on that offense that you're not going to see anything. And so I don't know. I think for him, I think he wants to go play with his friend, which is fine. But that's bringing cute. Your friend to your boss to say you want to go play with your friend, it is a weird look.
You know, I'm honestly curious how many general managers in the NFL are looking at Brandon Ayuk and being like, we're not going to pay you $30 million a year because we know the system that you play in right now. Like, Kyle Shanahan is figuring out ways to get you the ball in space and make you a productive NFL to, you know, pad your stats efficiently. But I wonder if these GMs are looking like, you know, like, you're not really worth $30 million. You know, like, I look at CeeDee Lamb, I look at Justin Jefferson. Those guys are game changers. But I don't know if I look at Brandon Ayuk in the same light as Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb.
Who's his comp then in the NFL? Like, who would you say this is a like product if you're to do like a comp on him?
Oh God,
that's tough. For me, I think like you look at somebody like Christian Kirk, and like I think Christian Kirk got overpaid, and I think Brandon Ayuk is better than Christian Kirk, but I also don't think he's at the upper echelon of the people that Yeti just mentioned either. And he's kind of in that like little in-between-esque area. And it's, I don't know. I say close to Jalen Waddle maybe is kind of, and I know that they're the same age, so that maybe that's why I have that natural bias for that comp. But let me ask you this
again.
26, 20.
He's 26, turning 27 this year.
Interesting. he's like in this weird no man's land of like wide receivers. He doesn't have. I think that's probably why they're struggling to get a deal done. Like the 49ers probably are honestly struggling to find like a good trade comp from him anyways, because there isn't. I think it's tough to find something that you're like, yeah, he's exactly like this, or he can do this in my offense.
Mm-hmm.
To what Yeti just said, I think it's tough to find that comp. And then you look at around the league, the Niners like, yeah, we can replicate this, but we also want to get top dollar for what we're getting. But it's hard to see. It's hard to see through the noise of that offense and in the rest of the league. I think it's tough.
So for size comparisons, Brandon Ayuk is 6 foot, 200 pounds. Stephon Diggs is 6 foot, 195. And when I compare those two players in their prime, Stephon Diggs, right, like when he got his big contract with Buffalo, I'm looking at a guy that is a complete route runner versus a guy in Brandon Ayuk who's kind of, you just get him the ball in space and he's going to do his thing. He's not as polished as a route runner as Stephon Diggs, so I don't know if I'd want to even give him that comp.
No, I wouldn't.
Size-wise.
No.
Let me ask you this, Yeti. I want to go back to something you said just a moment ago, and you were talking about how teams maybe are kind of struggling to even want to pay Ayuk because of Kyle Shanahan and what Kyle Shanahan's system is. Do you believe that Brandon Ayuk is not an upper, or not even like a great talent necessarily, and Kyle Shanahan plays more of a part in his success than people realize? Or do you think that maybe there's some hand in hand in both parties?
I honestly think it goes hand in hand, right? Because if you look at a guy like, this is going to be a weird example, but like Rashee Rice with the Chiefs, right? Like if Rashee Rice was with, I don't know, the Raiders last year, there's no way he's as productive as he was with the Raiders as he was with Kansas City.
Sure.
Because of the offense that he's in. And I think Brandon Ayuk's kind of in that same limelight where Ayuk, he's a good wide receiver. I'm not taking anything away from him. I think a lot of teams around the league would be happy to have him, but he's not that superstar wide receiver that's going to draw all the talent, all the coverage from defenses like some of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL will.
Do we want to play a game here very quickly and see?
You want to play a game?
Yeah, I love games.
Let's go back to the saw here.
Yeah, we're just going creepy.
What teams do we think realistically would pay? And I'm not saying $30 million a year, but let's say 28. What teams need a wide receiver so bad that they would be willing to spend $28 million a year to bring Brandon Ayuk in for his services? Any team? Okay, Steelers. That's probably
Steelers need everybody.
Yeah,
except for defense.
The Bills.
Bills need help.
Maybe with Josh Allen's contract going to be kicked up too. They're going to have some interesting decisions when he starts eating more of that cap too. But they didn't pay Diggs. That's why I feel like they're not going to turn around and pay Ayuk.
Patriots maybe.
I was thinking them, Giants, anybody that's wanted to like solidify their wide receiver core, because the Giants obviously are on like they need a total overall. I think there's a lot of teams that could do it. It's if they want to do it at his price, because that's the thing. Nobody's going to trade. The 49ers aren't going to do anything with another team if the other team's like, no, we're not going to pay him that, because then Ayuk's going to be like, well, fuck this. Like they want to know they're going to get a deal done. So it's who's got the cap space to do the deal that he wants, plus needs the wide receiver. So I think there are a handful of teams that fit that bill. It's just 49ers holding out because there's no rush for them. They're just like, we'll see this.
And that was kind of be where I was going to go next with this whole conversation is like, why would they? Why, if you were the 49ers, why would you try and get a deal done and secure him? Because like you mentioned, Alan, they're bringing in, younger players to kind of help fill in the void for Brandon Ayuk in the event that he does leave this offseason. But you're a contending team. Brandon Ayuk helps you get further along than if he wasn't with you. So why would you not just ride him out? And if Brandon Ayuk wants to sit out and throw a fit and say, hey, I'm not playing for you guys, well, then that's his own prerogative. And as the team, he's going to get dinged and dinged and dinged, and he's going to continue to lose money to the point where he's probably going to say, fuck it, I'm tired of losing this money. I'm going to go play, right? So for the 49ers, they're probably just going to say, hey, this is what we're willing to offer you. Now, here's the deal. If you come in this season and you light it up and you prove to us that you can be a top upper echelon wide receiver, well, then maybe we'll sit here and renegotiate this number. But as it stands, this is the current offer that we're willing to give you. And if you don't like it, tough shit. then you're going to play out your contract because we still need you to go and try and win a Super Bowl. That's how I look at it.
I agree.
And I think if he does hold out, he puts himself in a very sticky situation because Ricky Pearsall, who they drafted in the first round, is immediately going to see playing time in this offense. Mm-hmm. And if he comes out and he has similar stat lines to Brandon Ayuk, what's that going to say to Brandon Ayuk or like suitors for Brandon Ayuk? Like, oh shit, his production, to Allen's point, is it can be replicated by other people. He's just kind of a product of the Shanahan environment. So if he holds out, he could really fuck himself over.
Very.
It's not like he's speedy. He ran a 4.5 at the combine. It's not like he's super big. It's not like he definitely has he's a niche player. Like, I think he's really good, but I think he'd have to fit whatever a team's doing. If a team needs speed or if a team needs size, they can't pick Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about size. Head coach for the Giants, Brian Daboll. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he cut some pounds this offseason. Both him and his wife, they look great. We'll post a picture up so everybody can take a look at it. But Brian Daboll's skinny now, and I'm going to be the first to say I like chubby Brian Daboll a lot more. I'm glad that he's doing it for health. There was a lot of people. Actually, I would say 90% of Twitter was screaming Ozempic when the picture came out, which was hilarious. Right. But I'm glad that he's getting his health figured out. I am. But if he could still be the same size and healthy, I would much prefer that. I just had as he's gotten skinnier here, he just lost a little bit of the demeanor and the vigor that I needed from my head coach. And so I don't know if I like it as much.
There's definitely a correlation. The more you look like Santa Claus, the better you are. The less you look like Santa Claus, the worse you are. And to me, him getting smaller, he just doesn't look funny. Like he looks the other serious. When he was fat, he was smiling. When now he's skinny, he's not happy anymore. And I think just fat people are more funny. And I don't know. Maybe he's probably just a dud now. He's probably just gonna suck.
Plot twist: he lost all this weight because he knows the Giants don't have any wide receivers, and he might have to play wide receiver.
Him and Malik are lining up.
Yeah. Well, if you look at Andy Reid, look how fat he is. And
that's what I'm saying.
He's having a great time. And then
he loves it. They got him a cheeseburger for Christmas one year, and it's like, that's the kind of shit that I like seeing. I don't want my coach being lean.
No. Look at Shanahan and McVay. Like, they're winners, but like they look miserable.
Yeah. McVay looks happy. I think Shanahan looks way more abysmal than McVay does.
The fatter you are, the better. So I agree with that. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm nervous. Because I'm like,
but what do you have to lose?
My coach is too invested on his own body. What has he been doing to my team? And so now I'm like,
is he not?
I wish he was fat.
What a selfish head coach.
Yeah, not spend enough time watching film.
Yeah, I don't care. You're not going to live to 60 because of cardiovascular issues. I'd rather win some football games now. So
that's your problem later.
If the Giants start out 0-5, he's probably going to gain 20 pounds and be like, "Hey,
yeah, he's going to eat himself back into shape, and then they're going to start winning again." Yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson. This kind of came out of left field for me. I was not expecting it necessarily. Last Thursday, he agreed to a 4-year, $36 million extension with the Patriots, with $17 million in guarantees. And gentlemen, I'm going to be the first to say this. I did not realize that Ramondre Stevenson was still on his rookie contract. Gun to my head, if you ask me, is Ramondre Stevenson on his rookie contract? I'd be like, no, this is his second contract and he's looking for a third. The dude just got paid off his rookie contract. So, Yeti, you had kind of talked about this, off the air, but with Ramondre Stevenson. But do you like the signing of this deal?
I do. I do think the timing of the signing was very weird because it came out of left field. He still has 2 years on his deal, so it's not like he was pressed to sign a new deal at this point. But I like Stevenson as a talent. I think a lot of people are going to look at Stevenson's season last year as a failure, just coming off of the expectations after the 2022 season. But Stevenson, he did kind of turn it up a little in the second half of his career, or his season rather. He did end the season on the IR due to an ankle injury, but before he hurt his ankle, his efficiency numbers were going up. They had doubled from what they were in the first few weeks. So he was breaking tackles. He looked a lot better in the offense. And I think we're going to see a healthy 2022 version of Ramondre Stevenson this year. Another thing I want to add real quick is if you look at who the Patriots brought in as offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, he comes over from Cleveland. And when you look at Cleveland's history, they're going to run the ball. That's what Cleveland's offenses do. And with a rookie quarterback or Jacoby Brissett, they're going to want to set the pace right away with running the ball and, try to get 3 to 4 yards every carry. Let their quarterback do get the manageable throws in. But I think this offense is going to set up pretty well for Stevenson. And Stevenson is a receiving back too. So it's not like he needs to come out off the field a whole lot. He's got 107 receptions in the last 2 seasons, which is the 6th most among running backs. So I like Stevenson a lot, and I like the signing quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Gerard Mayo being his first year now taking over, you try to keep things the same as much as you can. I think for Stevenson, it's just at that price, do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth keeping him around? And right now, on a per year basis, that puts him right in between Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, what is that, number 7, I think? 7th?
Yeah,
overall?
It's like 6th or 7th at that per year, which is just ahead of like players like DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones. It's like, maybe? We'll see.
Well, I was going to kind of bring this up and pick your guys' brains on this. Like, I think it's 7th. I think that's where he's at as far as like the 7th highest paid running back right now. Is this, I don't want to say resetting the market, because the market has kind of been fluctuating depending on the running back. Like Christian McCaffrey obviously is the best running back. He's going to garner a lot of money, but like for the people that you just mentioned, like a Joe Mixon or DeAndre Swift or the running backs in that caliber, where they're still good running backs, but they're not Christian McCaffrey, is this going to be kind of more of the new norm for paying running backs, kind of around this kind of contract versus the exorbitant amount that we've seen in the past with some of these guys?
I think for these mid-level guys, I think it makes sense. McCaffrey's obviously the gold standard. He's a running back that can be on the field all the time. And in an age in the NFL where you're playing multiple backs, because it's hard to find that guy that can get out in space and then can also run between the tackles, I think you try to find something that's comparable in that realm. But I think it's until you find somebody like McCaffrey, I think you'll start seeing more NFL teams locking in these contracts that are under a $10 million per year basis as the salary cap goes up. You just lock in what you know. They're good. Last week I mentioned the Chiefs going back to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, could they have done better? Maybe, but it doesn't matter because it's value, right? They know what they can pay him, and it's easier to keep him in the fold. So I think you'll see more teams maybe start sticking with running backs, where we had a bit of a carousel over the last few years. Saquon notwithstanding, going to the Eagles, which also kind of slid under that, McCaffrey bar.
You have Derrick Henry going to the Ravens as well.
Yeah. And he's at that bar. Like he came in just at the Ramondre price. So that seems to be the price. If you can get a guy on a per year basis around that range, you're just going to lock it in to do it.
Okay. You mentioned Chiefs just a minute ago. We're not talking about running backs. We're going to talk about a former defensive lineman for the Chiefs, Isaiah Buggs. He was released from the Chiefs after back-to-back encounters with law enforcement, one of them being animal cruelty, allegedly, and then the other one being breaking into his baby mama's house with a tire iron and dragging her down the stairs, also allegedly. What's going on over there in Kansas City there, Alan? Because it seems like you guys are constantly in the media for shit going wrong. Is it something in the water? Do you have any sort of insight or thoughts as to what might be? Yeah. Is Andy Reid... Yeah. Is he letting go?
No. I just got off the phone with Brett Veach before we went live, and we were discussing the player movement. And what's interesting, this is a very concerted strategy from the Chiefs. After the stuff that happened with Rashee Rice, let's get other people to fuck up. That way, everybody forgets about Rice. So that way, it can be a minimal suspension, and then he can go ahead and start playing right away. So I think this is just a giant distraction. So everybody forgets about that, and then they can go ahead and get Rice in there sooner rather than later. And so, applaud to the Chiefs for falling in line and doing what they need to do. This is what winners do. Winners get arrested in the offseason. And until people start realizing that, it's just, we're going to have problems. And from my perspective, you show me somebody that hasn't done a little animal cruelty or drug their baby mama down the stairs. You find me those people who haven't done that, and then we'll talk, because it's normal. I feel my wife's gonna punch me right in the face.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We were talking about this before we hit record, but it's like, dude, how hard is it to just be a normal person. Just don't fuck it up. You are an NFL player. Just don't fuck it up. That's all you got to do. Like, just don't screw up. Maybe don't beat animals. Maybe don't drag a human being, let alone your baby mama, down the stairs. Like, just be a normal human being. You made it. The dream that everybody, all NFL fans wish they could be in your seat. They do. Like, if I was built like a shit brick house, I would love to go play for the NFL. I'm not. I wasn't naturally athletically gifted enough to do that. You are. So why do you screw it up? Just be a normal dude. I just don't get it.
Yeah. If you did make the NFL, I would totally rat on you for animal cruelty just to see what happened. No, NFL, they say it stands for not for long. These players, for one reason or the other, whether it be by their own doing, injury, age, whatever, these careers, they go quick. And this is one that is easily prevented, I feel like. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, the Chiefs released them. I know the Chiefs very famously in the past have not released players, cough Tyreek Hill, and whatever.
Yeah, I think some of it comes with a little bit of like stardom. Like obviously Tyreek Hill is like he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So of course you're going to try and not cut him because the Browns will pick him up. So you have to try and figure out a way to make it work. But Isaiah Bucks is not somebody that you're probably going to miss. Alan, I'm going to let you share this next piece of news so I don't seem like I'm slurping on something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I got you. I think, now that we don't have Scotty present, with his bitterness towards certain NFL head coaches, I think it's time that we give proper due and flowers to one Dan Campbell. We don't talk about him very often on this show if you listen to this show often, and it's largely because of Scotty. He has an agenda. Not only does he not take proper time off from this podcast with accrued PTO, but he also slanders Dan Campbell. And there was an article that came out from SI.com, and it's really highlighting Dan Campbell for how he mixes fun and awesome in his leadership style. And I think we've observed that as bystanders just watching the NFL. He looks fun. He looks like he's having a great time. And one of the quotes from a player on the team said, just being around Dan, being around the staff, love the energy, love the sense of urgency, the attention to detail. So it's something I've really been looking for in my entire career. And I know Scotty would be the first to tell you that Dan Campbell has a sense of urgency, has an attention to detail, and really loves his job. And I think this is, all kidding aside, I do think this is what is going to attract more and more players to Detroit the longer he's there and having success. You look at the run they had this year. I don't think anybody forecasted that. I think everybody forecasted a step forward, but maybe not to that degree. And for all intents and purposes, they should have been in the Super Bowl. They should have had that. And I think that's a learning experience for that entire staff, for that entire roster. But seeing this article come out from SA.com and just hearing how much Dan Campbell means to that team and how much he is a player's coach, that's amongst all of the women in animal beating we just talked about, seeing something really positive like that from an NFL head coach that's just totally inputting into these young men and driving change for these young players in the league. I think it's nice to see. Big Dan Campbell fan.
I agree. I mean, look, I don't talk about Dan Campbell. I've never said anything nice about Dan Campbell. I think that's what makes him so appealing, and I think that's what has captivated a lot of the NFL audience. You look at last season, if you weren't Matt Holtmeyer, the whole world was rooting for the Lions. That's just what it was. And I'm not being facetious here. I'm being genuinely serious. If your team was not in contention for the Super Bowl, almost every single person was rooting for the Lions, and you have to sit there and ask yourself why. And it's well, they haven't been to the Super Bowl ever. This is the longest run they've had in 30 years. In the Dan Campbell, it's kind of infectious. I'm not going to sit here and say Dan Campbell's the best head coach because I think there's a lot that goes into making somebody the best head coach. From a gamesmanship standpoint, yeah, he made a lot of errors last year. I'll be the first to stand up and say that. There were a lot of questionable decisions that were made, and we've already hashed those out in previous episodes. But what you can't ignore is the things that you just mentioned, Alan, the drive to create a culture that people want to be a part of. And that's largely where I think he's found a lot of success and will continue to find a lot of success, because if you read the article, he's going into he's making everything competitive, but he's making it fun and he's making it engaging and he's trying to drive that culture that I think a lot of players really are striving to want to be a part of. Like, and my first thought when I read this article was like, could you imagine being on the Patriots last year? Like, if you had to choose which team you wanted to be a part of, like, would you rather be a part of the Patriots or would you rather be a part of the Lions? And it's like, dude, I would take the Lions every single day.
I think some of that you saw with the Raiders too, with Pierce towards the end of that year. Like he was making it fun. He was a player's coach. He had played. He knows what it's like. He knows it's a bitch day in and day out. Like, you literally, if you think about the life of an NFL player, you prep all this time, you do all these things, and like you have, 60 game minutes to do anything, and it's not very many snaps that you get to shine. So that margin of error is like super thin. Like, you really don't have any room to do anything. You can't mess up a couple times. There is none of that. And I think for coaches like that, I think it's important for these people, because like we just said, this, you don't get a ton of time in the league, and you might as well have some fun with it while you're there, because you don't know when it's going to come to an abrupt end. And so I think you're going to start to see more coaches like that, where you're going to see NFL, the GMs are going to be like, you know what, maybe he's not going to like X and O me to death, but he's going to attract the people that want to come here and stay here. People are going to love playing for him. It creates a positive environment, and I think it's fun to see. Aside from Dan Campbell, I think any changes like that.
Alan, I think two names that come to mind right away when you say players, coaches is Mike Tomlin, and then notably Antonio Pierce, just because I'm a Raiders fan. Like, players, when they see those two guys, Mike Tomlin, Antonio Pierce, and Dan Campbell, obviously, they're like, I want to play for that guy. Look at what he does for his players, and I want to be surrounded by like-minded guys like that, and I want him as my head coach. But I think the proof is in the pudding too. When we look at Dan Campbell's history, he took over in 2021. This team was 3-13-1. 3-13-1.
But you know what? Do you know what he was saying the whole time when they were 3-13-1? Is like, give it time. Things are going to change. And I remember that he was like,
in 2022, he goes 9-8. And then last year, obviously 12-5, and they win the AFC or the NFC North for the first time in over 20 years. They win their first playoff game in over 20 years, and they're just going to keep this train rolling as long as Dan Campbell's going to go.
And look what the Patriots did. They have Gerard Mayo, he's a young former NFL player, players coach. Like that, you're going to start to see the trend. I like it. I think it's fun for the game, because we tried to over-engineer football so much, and a lot of it is just like the want and the will to play for the guy next to you. And those coaches give those players that want and the will to play for him next. Like, sure, you might find a better X's and O guy, but that you can't replicate. That's hard to replicate.
Well, it gets really dangerous when you find somebody who not only can create that culture, but also be that X and O guy at the same time. And somebody that comes to mind is like Sean McVay. Like, I think Sean McVay is a top 3 coach in the NFL for that reason right there. Is not only is his football IQ really great, but you can tell he creates a culture where people want to play, and they want to play for each other, and they want to win. And so I agree with you. And you can also hire people to be those X's and O's guys. Like, you have offensive coordinators, you have defensive coordinators. Like, like you can hire people to help you do those things. So I'm interested to see, as things progress in the NFL, what the landscape looks like, because I think you're probably right, Alan.
Question for you: do you think McVay is the next Chiefs head coach?
No,
I don't think so. I would probably become a Chiefs fan if he was.
You don't think he's gonna, when his contract's up and Reed retires, he's just gonna be like, "Yep"?
I think it's got to be Spags. It's got to be.
It's got to be
point,
Spags.
Right?
It's
I don't know. He had a shot. He's done it before. It didn't work out.
I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I love Spags though, and Spags we trust.
What the hell's his name? The Bears head coach that came back to be your quarterback coach.
Oh no.
I can't remember his
Nagy.
Name. Nagy.
Yeah, Matt Nagy. No.
Yeah, hard pass. All right, enough Dan Campbell talk. Let's go over to the Panthers. Another thing that I don't think any of us really care a whole lot about, but Charlotte, the city of Charlotte, approved $650 million in renovations for the Panthers stadium. And I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One, first and foremost, this news that needs to be discussed, but also, like, the Chiefs are kind of on the hot seat for this very same thing right now, and the Chiefs are, unbeknownst to probably a lot of the people in the U.S. that are NFL fans, Kansas City is not located in Kansas City, right? Like, there's like Kansas City Chiefs are not located in Kansas City. It's like right on a dividing line. and they're about to try and get the stadium moved over to Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Alan?
They're in Missouri now. They're going to move to there's strong lean that they're going to go to Kansas.
Yes, and they're going
to switch states.
There was city officials in Kansas who just signed a bill to approve this, to try and get them to come over there. And the reason that they're trying to move is because the state of Missouri is not wanting to help them pay for their stadium, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's weird because the city of Charlotte is helping pay for the Panthers stadium. And it's just crazy to me how, there's notes here in the doc that I believe you put in here, but it's like how billionaire owners hold the cities kind of hostage to finance their stadiums. Like, is that not kind of effed up a little bit? Like, you can't afford to get yourself a new stadium? Or at least contribute like a substantial contribution to try and get a better stadium?
It's an odd look now for billionaires. You look around, you look at the state of the economy, and what everybody's going through, or across the United States, whether it's inability to pay bills, trying to just stay alive. You can't even go to McDonald's now for less than like $15 when it used to be like $5 and you were a king. And then you have these billionaire owners that are holding a gun to the city's heads, like, hey, I will move this team and you will not see the economic benefits of my team unless you build me a stadium. And I wish more teams would, I kind of liked when the Missouri, like this people in Missouri, like, no, F that. Like, we're not paying for that. Like, what is this? And
because it raises the people who are buying McDonald's, it raises their tax, right? Like, it raises everybody's tax in the area to try and pay for an NFL stadium. And look, I love the NFL. I mean, we sit here and talk about it every single week, but if I had to pay more in taxes to go to this, like, for a stadium to be built, I'd probably be pretty pissed off because, admittedly, I kind of like sitting on my couch and watching Sunday Ticket. Like,
especially it's the freaking Panthers.
Yes.
Why on God's green earth is anybody willing to fork over money for that? That owner's
the Raiders kind of strong arm themselves out of Oakland too, because Al Davis and Mark Davis, they were both like, hey, Oakland, build us a brand new stadium. We don't want to share this fucking field with the Oakland Athletics anymore. It's a baseball field. It's not supposed to be a football stadium. And Oakland fought it. They fought it for years, and they were like, nope, we're not going to do it. And Mark Davis said, all right, I'm going to go to a city that wants to pay for a stadium. They want to pay $1.9 billion for a new stadium. Fuck yeah, I'm going to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Which that makes sense because it's Vegas.
It's beautiful. We had a great time in Vegas. That was a great stadium. 100%. I enjoyed myself.
Yeah. So did I. Yeah. Cool stadium. And guess what? I didn't have to pay the taxes for it. And honestly, with as much gambling that goes on in Vegas, it probably wasn't a very significant impact as far as like anything anyway. So like in that instance, I understand. But if you're staying in the same place, like, could you imagine? Let's talk in hypotheticals for a moment here. We're all NFL fans, but if this was a soccer pitch, how pissed off would you guys be if your taxes increased because a soccer pitch was being made at $1 billion? Your taxes increase for something you don't care about, and it's like you look at the general populace, and it's like, yeah, NFL fans are probably like, this fucking sucks, but like the people who don't even care about the NFL are probably not very happy that their taxes are going to increase for something they could give a shit about.
That's 100%. And you mentioned sitting on your couch, Slaps. Like, I think that's the thing for a lot of fans too, even going to these games, is like the experience generally is kind of shitty. You have to pay to park, you have to pay to get into the stadium, you have to pay $100 to drink, you have to shell out all this money. Oh, and by the way, you're sitting on a plastic or metal thing that, is not as comfortable as your couch. Like, what if we were to build a stadium right now and we said it's going to be the most fan friendly stadium, what's one thing you'd want in that fan experience? You're like, okay, when I show up, this is what I want as a fan.
I want free beer on tap. That'd
be sick.
You want me to come watch this game?
Do you know how sick that would be?
That'd be so cool.
That would be gangster.
It'd be so cool. That would entice me because, like, I think about it from a consumer standpoint as somebody who consumes the NFL, not beer. Well, I do both. But like, I love going to a sports bar. That's really where I enjoy meeting the boys at a sports bar, and you got 60 TVs everywhere, and you can watch every angle of every game, and then there's somebody that just brings me beer whenever I need it, and it's like, it's the perfect setup for me. That's what I truly enjoy. Yeah. And guess what? That entire experience for me sitting at a sports bar for 4 hours and drinking as much beer as I can possibly drink is still cheaper than me getting a ticket, going and paying for parking, going to the stadium, buying one beer, and then sitting there and only getting to watch one game for the next 2 hours. Like, that's it. I don't know. I would much prefer to watch TV than go to the stadium for all the reasons.
Most people are in that. Most people are in that boat. Agreed.
Which is kind of weird, and it begs the question, like, and this probably won't happen in our lifetime, but like, will they make stadiums smaller and like you can, and it's an even more exclusive group.
They are in college. There is a lot of college stadiums through the renovations are making the seats bigger or wider, or creating more room, or doing things to make the experience. Because even you think the NFL experience, we're talking like NFL. Think about all the colleges around and the stadiums struggling to keep people in there. Like, there's going to be a concerted effort. A while back interviewed with a company that does gambling. I won't name them on this, no free advertising, but they, as part of like the interview process, I was like, what's something that, you see happening, in NFL stadiums in the coming years? And they were like, just more consider like in-seat gambling with the fans, like quicker access to the prop bets. What's going to happen on this play?
Didn't the Cardinals add gambling kiosks in their stadium recently?
Yeah, the Cardinals did a bunch of renovations to their stadium.
Yep, it may be the same company that I talked about, but that's going to be it. Like, how can you replicate that? Like you said, you're sitting in a sports bar. Like, how do you replicate a sports bar in a football stadium? And part of the appeal of going to a football stadium was, you didn't really get to see the game, especially for those fans that, because it wasn't, you had like a few teams on TV, especially if you're like in the Midwest, like most of us are from. You saw the Packers, the Bears, or the Chiefs, or the Broncos, and that was it. And if you wanted to see your team, you had to go. And now you can NFL Red Zone it, and you're just chilling on your couch all day. Like, there's no appeal to going. So totally get it, man. It's just wild.
Yeah, especially as like fantasy football players. Like, I want Red Zone because I want to be able to hop between games and see the big plays and see what's going on and see, hey, did my guy score? And when you go to a game, you can't watch the other games, and that makes it a little less appealing for me than sitting on my couch. So
yeah, all good.
All right, let's we got one more thing to talk about here. The Chiefs starting safety, Justin Reed, said he will be taking over kickoff duties from Harrison Butker following the NFL rule change. Reason being is the blockers will be lined up closer to the kicking team, meaning that the kicker is now much more valuable to get down the field and make a tackle. And kind of the consensus behind this was to try and make plays when they changed these rules was to make kickoffs more exciting and more explosive. And I'm interested to see, do you guys think there will be any other NFL teams that might not use their kicker and might use, like, this might become more of a standard, is using like a safety or a D-back of some kind to pooch kick the ball versus try and kick it out of the end zone? You guys are nodding your head yes, but I need some verbal confirmation.
I was waiting for Yeti to go. No,
I was waiting for Alan to go.
I'll go because I think this is going to be fun. I think it's going to make for more explosive plays on special teams because I think too often you saw it just kicked out. The NFL's, like we just talked about, trying to grow the game and trying to make it more appealing every play because there were throwaway plays, even field goals. Remember that it used to be like right on the 5, like nobody's missing that. Then they scooted it back and it's like, oh, somebody might miss that. I got to watch this to make sure this goes through because it used to just be a throwaway. And now kickoffs were largely becoming a throwaway because you have all these kickers that can just boom it through the end zone. Like, there's no point. And even when they don't, it's a minimal play at best because, everybody's flying down the field at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So this is one of the XFL changes that was brought in where you don't get a running start. The blockers are right there. It's going to be tougher for you to get downfield, and it's going to be tougher for you to make that tackle. So having a kicker now that can kick it and then just, haul ass unimpeded to go try to make that tackle. Like, I think you're going to find more and more teams go for more of a rugby style. Like, that's like, all right, I'm going to kick this and get down there and just try to like muddy it up. I think, also the implications on just injuries, like you're just going to see probably fewer injuries from people getting knocked out and all that. Like, one, it wasn't fun because they're kicking at the end zone. And then if they did kick it at the end zone, be careful because you might scramble your own brain. So there's a couple of things I think the NFL is mitigating. So I think for me, from a fantasy perspective, this makes defense special teams more interesting when you're talking about how are they going to do things. Like a Cordell Patterson might, you're talking about people with value. Like, you're going to find these players that are going to have like more value now because you're like, all right, you go just haul ass, you're going to have more space to do it. Because I think you're going to see fewer and fewer kicks go out of the end zone as teams adopt the strategy to have another tackle, to have somebody that can tackle back there.
Patterson was somebody I thought of immediately when this rule change went into place. Like, Patterson's value is going to shoot through the roof again because he made a name as return specialist, but over the years, kickers have gotten stronger and there's much more touchbacks than there were, 10 years ago, right? And it's kind of eliminated the specialty for the returners. But a guy like John Ross too, who recently he was out of the NFL for like the past 2 seasons. He wasn't on a roster. Now all of a sudden he's on the Eagles practice squad, and they're probably messing with him and like, hey, go be a returner, and you might get us 40 yards on that return now and put us in a great spot. So Xavier Worthy's another one of those guys. I'm not saying he's going to be a bum in the NFL, but I'm sure Andy Reid is like, we got to get him at kick returner right away, because he gives us such an advantage if he's back there, and he's one of the fastest guys in the NFL. He's going to get at least 25, 30 yards on the kickoff return easy.
The funny thing is, everybody's going to forget that this happened, and I'm happy this news came out, because we're going to have to do I probably have a segment before the season starts where like, all right, what changed? Because they're also going to be toying around with like the what was it, the auto like down markers, and like trying to like trip if people got first. There's going to be a lot of these things that come into play that is going to change the way the game's played. I think it's a positive evolution of the game. There will be some hand wringing from the olds, but it should be all in all positive.
Well, and still talking about kickers here for just a second. Like, does the value of kickers not go down necessarily, but like, do we see them not get paid as much because now they have their job duties are significantly less? Like, you think about it, if Harrison Butker is a wonderful example of this, how many times a game are you kicking the ball off? You know what I mean? Like, on average, probably 4 or 5 kickoffs a game, just depending upon how your team's doing that day, alongside with the fact that you now have to try and kick 55, 35-yard field goals and stuff. If you're taking away that and all they have to do is kick field goals, does the price to be a kicker go down? Because now my dream job might not be as cushy as I once thought it was. Something to just keep in mind as we progress. And then does Justin Reed, and I'm just using this as an example because we talked about it, but does he try and garner more money because he's like, well, now I'm doing additional job duties? So something to think about.
What a weird, this game is changing so fast.
It is. And I'm like I said, just something I've to toy with. I'm sure we'll see this play out down the road, but just something to bring up because
I wonder how many more XFL kickers are going to get brought to the NFL now, because they do have experience with these kickoff rules. And I know we've already seen, I can't remember his name, but I know
brought one in.
Yeah, the Lions just brought one in. I can't remember his name, but those guys have experience with the rules, so they know, hey, we can't get it to the end zone or else the opposing team's going to get the ball at the 30-yard line. So they have figured out ways to make that happen.
Head coach most likely to forget this rule changed. Who do you think that is?
I was gonna say.
I'm gonna say Sean Payton.
Yeah, fuck you, Sean Payton.
He's gonna forget. He's gonna be like, whoa. He's gonna challenge the opening kickoff. He's gonna be like, what the hell is that?
Dennis Allen.
Shanahan forgot the overtime rules in the Super Bowl. So
yeah. I think Dennis Allen will be a candidate for that. John Gannon over the Cardinals, I think might forget. There's a couple that might not forget. Also, they might not care. Maybe they're just like, maybe we'll still see people just kick it out of the end zone and they'll start at the 30 instead of the 25, and they're like, fuck it. Like, I think that also could potentially just.
But what's interesting is if you're a returner, even if you're like 5, 6, 7 yards deep, the blockers are kind of hemmed up for the most part. You have still 20, 30 yards of real estate to go try to make something happen. That'll be interesting. That'll be fun to watch until somebody figures it out, and then it's boring again.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have, gentlemen. There wasn't a lot going on in the NFL this week. We're kind of in that lull period. But I will say this. Go check out leatherbrains.com. There are articles over there every single week. We're working on bringing on more people. So if you are a blog writer or interested in writing for us over on leatherbrains.com, shoot us a DM. There is, or over on Twitter, you can apply. If you go to our main page over at Leatherbrains on our account, there's a thing that says we're hiring. Click it, throw in a resume, send it over to us, and we will review your work. And if we think you might be a good quality candidate, you might join the Leatherbrains team and do some writing for us. So check that out. Hit the 5 stars. Do the subscribe. Do all the things. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Let's get out of here. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, A championship should be more than a fantasy.